On the brink of turning 30 and feeling the pressure to get married, I reached out to everyone I knew, asking, "Does anyone know a good match for me?" Through a friend's introduction, I met John, and after dating for nearly a year, we decided to get married. 2 months into our marriage, I was at my breaking point. I wanted a divorce as soon as possible. There were a few red flags while we were dating, but my desire to get married was so strong that I turned a blind eye to all of John's flaws. It's true what they say, hindsight is 20/20. My name is Mia, and I'm a 29-year-old nurse. John, who is 8 years my senior, turned out to be a boastful and incredible liar. First off, his job title was a lie. John was actually just a supermarket employee with no specific position. I didn't intend to judge based on occupation, but he had claimed to be the store manager while we were dating, and given he was 37 years old, I naturally believed him. However, when we were deciding on the guest list for our wedding, he mentioned, "We have to invite the store manager, Alex, and the assistant manager, David," revealing his lie. "Wait, I thought you said you were the manager?" When I confronted John, he casually revealed, "I never said that. I mentioned I'd eventually become the manager." What? You lied? I was shocked and felt betrayed. But the wedding venue was already booked, and we had already introduced each other's families. "If you really mind, we don't have to get married," John said, threateningly. Regretfully, I replied, "No, let's get married," which I now realize was a mistake. "You didn't fall for my job title, you fell for me, right? The details don't matter. Just follow me without fuss." "Is that so?" John tried to act confident and cool, but frankly, it was anything but. Then why lie about being a manager in the first place? I wanted to point that out, but I kept quiet to avoid an argument. The next lie was about our living situation. This lie led to us living with his parents. Both John and I had been living with our own parents before marriage, but I had suggested, "Let's build a house halfway between our parents' homes when we get married." I've always dreamed of owning a detached family house. Growing up in a dilapidated rental house, I knew I wanted my own place once I was married. I had been diligently saving for this goal. John readily agreed, so visiting housing exhibitions and real estate agents became a regular part of our dates. But when it was time to narrow down our options, should we go with the place we saw last week? Being near an elementary school would be good, right? When I asked, John began, "My sister says she doesn't want to live near an elementary school because it's noisy. She prefers being close to a convenience store. And my mom wants to be near a hospital. My dad doesn't care where we live as long as there's space to display his puzzles. Why are your sister, mother, and father's preferences coming into this?" I was shocked because I had assumed it would be just the two of us. "What? You knew this, right? I'm the eldest son. It's obvious we're going to build a new duplex for the family to live together." This was completely new to me. I had always discussed with John about just the two of us living together, and I thought he was on board. "If that's the case, I'm the eldest daughter, and my mother is alone at home. Your family has both your parents, remember? You're a woman, and I'm a man, it's different. Besides, your mother is okay with her daughter getting married, right?" "That's true, but I wasn't informed about this. As an only daughter, I was concerned about my mother living alone, and had initially considered marrying someone who would join our family. But finding a man who met the criteria proved difficult. After my mother told me, 'I'll be fine, so put your happiness first,' I started dating John. I didn't mention it, but you know, my sister doesn't work, and my parents are living on their pension. As the eldest son's family, it's our duty to support them." "Wait a minute. Don't include me in this so casually. I might come to terms with living with my in-laws, but having his sister live with us too is something I can't accept. Despite being in a neat status since her high school days, his sister isn't suffering from any illness, she's perfectly healthy. She says she doesn't want to work because she prefers to enjoy life." His mother shared similar traits with his sister, and his father, though quiet, would just watch TV and work on his puzzles all day without doing any housework. Huh? You're the wife of the eldest son. Are you saying you have no intention of supporting the family? I was speechless. Was this man serious? Then he should support them within his own means. My dream of a brand new single-family home was quickly deflating. John remained firm, "I'm not backing down. If you don't like it, we can just get a divorce. So for now, I'll move in with your family." I believe that was the best play I could make under the circumstances. I postponed the idea of building our own house. I didn't want to waste the savings I had accumulated for our dream home during my single years. Thus, after getting married, I ended up living with John's family. Since John worked at the supermarket and I was a nurse, we both were on shifts. I also had night shifts. Shortly after moving in, I was woken up by my mother-in-law ripping off my blanket after a night shift, saying, "Sleeping until noon is unacceptable for a daughter-in-law. I just got back a little while ago, and I have another night shift tomorrow. Stop complaining and do some housework. Make lunch for us." "What are you doing?" I silently pushed my mother-in-law out of the room. This was no joke. I needed sleep. "Mia. Who do you think you are?" I could hear my mother-in-law still ranting in the hallway, but I ignored her. I locked the door, put in earplugs, covered myself with a blanket, and went back to sleep. I woke up around 3 p.m. and started doing housework. It's strange. In this house, besides me, there are 3 other healthy adults, yet why am I the only one expected to do housework and work? Then my husband came home. "Hey, Mia, I heard about it. You were home, and you didn't make lunch for my mom." "Well, I was tired. Besides, when I'm not around, you guys manage on your own, so why can't you do the same when I'm sleeping?" John scolded me while his parents and sister smirked behind him. "What about you? Weren't you supposed to work until tonight?" I left early because my sister called about a family emergency. All this because I didn't make lunch? Ridiculous. My true feelings slipped out. This only added fuel to the fire, and John scolded me even more. Is marriage supposed to be this hard for a wife? With no peace at my in-laws, I found excuses to return to my mother's house on particularly exhausting days or on my days off. My mother welcomed me without a word. "I want a divorce." Yet, I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. Then, the topic of moving came up at my mother's house. "They want us to move out next year?" The rental house my mother was living in had severe leaks. The landlord decided it would be better to demolish it rather than undertake major repairs. That's right. It's not immediate, but you know, there are the rescue cats. We need a pet-friendly apartment. After my father passed away, my mother started volunteering to temporarily foster abandoned or lost cats. Though we lived in a rental, it was an old house nearly 50 years old, and the landlord was understanding. "Then I'll help look too." It was a great excuse to fill my time on days off. It would help my mother, and I loved looking at properties. It was killing not 2, but 3 birds with 1 stone. While visiting various real estate agencies, my mother muttered, "A detached family house is just a pipe dream." Wait a minute. It hit me suddenly. A divorce would solve everything. A house is a lifetime investment, and I want to live with someone I truly want to be with. Oh. Cat Ears Construction? It was a construction company we stumbled upon by chance, but the sign had a cat picture on it. And a banner at the entrance read, "Homes for Cat Lovers." We couldn't help but go inside. The clerk, a very friendly woman, enthusiastically explained their offerings, including a catio, an outdoor cage for cats. I thought cats were strictly indoor pets. But it turns out they offer sunrooms for cats who enjoy sunbathing and large cages that allow cats to safely go outside through a special door. We listened intently and left with a bunch of brochures. As we left the store, I declared, "I'm going to get divorced and live with you, Mom." That came out of nowhere. My mom was surprised but didn't say anything more. I can't imagine John, his parents, or his sister changing for the better, and the mistreatment will likely get worse. I have no intention of just nodding along anymore. By the time I got home, it was already evening. I hurriedly started preparing dinner. I put the brochures in a bag and left them on the sofa to look at later. The laundry I did in the morning was still there. And the kitchen table was littered with the remains of the frozen pizzas and forks my in-laws and sister-in-law had for lunch. You're the wife. How long do you plan to loaf around? I'm starving. Sorry about that. But your sister could have made something, you know. What? That's ridiculous. My sister-in-law was visibly upset, but I decided not to let it bother me. We'll be strangers soon anyway. Later that night, my husband came home and scolded me, "Hey. There's only $700 in the account for this month's expenses." I lied, "Oh, sorry. There was some administrative issue at work, so my salary will be delayed." "All right then. Make sure to deposit it as soon as you get paid, or it's divorce for us." "Sure," I replied. Last month, when we started living together, we discussed how to handle the household expenses. John insisted that I contribute almost my entire salary of $2,500, while he would only put in $700. He planned to keep the rest as his allowance, but I couldn't agree to that. I insisted on equal contributions, and through various means, I've only been depositing $700 for the past 2 months. Life continued much the same for a while. I consulted a lawyer, prepared for divorce, sorted my belongings, and kept busy with work and organizing my parents' home. John, who usually has different days off, recently started going out more often with his parents and sometimes even his sister. I found it odd, but it was convenient for me. Then, one day, John said, "I've bought a new duplex. We're going to sign the mortgage next Monday. Just so you know, if you oppose this, we divorce." He even showed me the divorce papers, very considerately. A house. What do you mean? You brought home those housing brochures, right? I went with a different major builder, but it's still based on what you wanted. So you'll need to use all your savings. Indeed, I had talked about saving for a home when we were looking at properties. Can I see those divorce papers, please? My mind went blank with shock, but this was actually an opportunity. I meekly looked down and took the divorce papers. Skimming through, I saw it was already filled in. I had to stop myself from laughing. John didn't know I was preparing for divorce, so he thought threatening me with the one thing he believed I'd hate the most would make me comply. Too sweet. Dreading divorce was a thing of the past. Now, I couldn't wait to get divorced. I immediately completed the divorce papers and submitted them early the next morning. Since I hadn't brought any large items like furniture with me and had been gradually moving my belongings out, I was able to leave without much hassle. I went straight back to my mom's house. Even though John kept calling and emailing me that night, I ignored them all. A few days later, my ex-husband showed up at my parents' home. He brought his parents and sister with him, and all of them were fuming with anger. "Hey. What's the meaning of this? Why aren't you coming home?" I simply filed for divorce because I was given the divorce papers. I answered nonchalantly. "Don't mess around. I even built a house for us." "Well, you built that house without consulting me and threatened me with divorce if I objected." "That was your decision," I reminded him. Perhaps because we were at my mom's house, my mother-in-law was unusually quiet and tried to claim John must have been joking. Filling in divorce papers as a joke is not funny. Our personalities don't match at all, so I'll take this opportunity to divorce. Irreconcilable differences are the #1 reason for divorce, you know. My sister-in-law also chimed in, "We'll be in trouble without you. Who's going to provide for us? Who's going to pay the mortgage?" "Well, that's something your family needs to figure out on your own. I'm a stranger now. Besides, why should I have to take care of a perfectly healthy sister-in-law?" I retorted. My father-in-law glared at me in silence. "I never thought you could be so cold." John exclaimed. "Hey, look. That sounds like a difference in values, doesn't it? Another perfect reason for divorce." I joked. When I consulted with a lawyer, I was informed that simply citing irreconcilable differences or a clash of values isn't usually enough to easily obtain a divorce. However, in John's case, he lied about his job and income, and his everyday attitude spells verbal abuse. He tried to unilaterally force me to cover all living expenses. To top it off, he went ahead and bought a duplex on his own and then threatened me with a filled-in divorce form. So the reasons for our divorce were clear-cut. "I won't accept this divorce," John insisted. "Even if you say you don't acknowledge it, you wrote it yourself, and your father and mother are the witnesses." I showed him the screen of my phone. It was a good thing I took a photo before submitting it to the lawyer. At that moment, my mother appeared, filming everything on her phone. "What do you think you're doing to my daughter? I've called the police. I've recorded everything. I can make this public if I want." While my mom hadn't said anything to me, she was obviously furious. My father-in-law panicked at the mention of the police. "Please, no police. It'll look bad. Stop this." I had always thought my father-in-law was the silent type, but it seems he does speak up in situations like this. I realized in an odd way that John's tendency to boast must have come from his father. With that, John and his family reluctantly left. "What are we going to do now? We can't pay the mortgage." "Well, I guess we have no choice but to cancel," I overheard them say, but I knew cancellation fees would apply if they were already under contract. And with John's income alone, affording the house was impossible. Serves them right. Later on, perhaps worried about their public image, they paid me a settlement without a fuss, and a few months later, my mom and I moved into our dream home. A brand new detached family house built by Cat Ears Construction, tailored for the rescue cats to live in comfort. The construction company, aware of my mom's rescue activities, built the perfect house for us at a significantly lower price than the market rate. Both my mom and I were thrilled. I might have rushed into marriage and made a huge mistake, but if I hadn't been married, I might never have thought to build this house. Watching the cats bask in the sun and sleep contentedly, I couldn't help but think that all's well that ends well. I forgot. Here, this month's grocery money. What my husband slammed down was a single $50 bill. Only $50 a month for a family of 3. That's impossible. If you say it's not enough, then you should earn more. I could find no further foothold to argue with my husband, who looked at me with a chilly gaze. My name is Lily, and I'm 27 years old. I live with my husband and daughter. I met my husband, Tom, during our college years, and we became a couple 6 months after we met. I lost my mother when I was in elementary school, and since then, I was raised in a single-father household. I've faced prejudice from some people and never had a fiancé before. I heard my ex, Alex, talking behind my back, "A child from a single-parent family can't be a good marriage partner. Can they even raise kids properly?" But Tom was different. He said, "Your father must be a remarkable man to have raised such a wonderful woman like you." When I heard his words, tears rolled down my cheeks. Tom was always on my side, no matter what. At that moment, I became certain of him. After graduation, we both started working at my father's company. 3 years into our careers, Tom and I decided to get married. My father, who raised me in a single-parent household, is a very anxious man. He wanted Tom to be his successor. However, Tom's family strongly opposed, so we had to give up on that idea. I ended up marrying into Tom's family. And thus, our married life began. We were blessed with a child within 6 months. Afterward, I resigned from my father's company. I wanted to build a happy family surrounded by our children. I was delighted to feel closer to the happy family I had dreamed of. Little did I know that the birth of our child would mark the beginning of a nightmare. One evening at dinner. "Hey. Are you trying to piss me off with this awful meal? Make it again." As I tried to calm Tom's anger, ensuring it didn't turn towards our daughter, Emily, who started crying at his voice, I said, "I'm sorry. But this is takeout food. It's good, isn't it? Don't talk back to me. And if that's takeout, you're just being lazy. Do your household and parenting duties properly. How can you, please stop taking it out on me? You can't even cook properly. You're such a useless wife." Tom spat out those words and locked himself in his room. Why has it come to this? The kind person he used to be was nowhere to be found. As if he had become a completely different person. Thinking back, Tom's behavior began to change gradually after our daughter was born. He would get irritated easily, belittle me by saying things like, "You can't earn money, you're useless." Or, "Can't you even do the housework properly as a stay-at-home mom?" This is why children from single-parent families. He would ignore or not listen when I asked about work, possibly due to exhaustion. After all, Tom wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom to support the family, which led me to quit my job at my father's company. Tom's occasional tyrannical behavior seemed as if he enjoyed having control over me. Despite my growing resentment towards him, knowing the hardships of a single parent, I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce for the sake of our daughter. It seemed Tom was doing well at his company. He would sometimes call my father, who was too busy with work, to seek advice. But in reality, I would often sigh when looking at the photo of my younger self with my mother in our room. I wish I could have discussed this with Mom. 3 years into this life, one day, I forgot. "Here, this month's grocery money." Tom threw down a single $50 bill as he said that. Just $50 a month for a family of 3. That's impossible. What happened to the money? Being frugal and making do with what you have is what a stay-at-home mom should be doing. You're always home. So use that brain of yours to think of something. Don't be unreasonable. Let me manage the household expenses. I have my own social expenses, so no. It's $50 for just you and the child. It should be easy, right? That's just impossible. Saying that, my husband left the room. Your father is a remarkable man to have raised to such a wonderful woman like you. Where has the Tom of those days gone? Or is this the real him? I've thought about running away many times, but I couldn't do that, thinking of my daughter. The hardship of raising a child alone. Oh, if only my mom was still alive. I've contemplated divorce several times. But the thought of burdening my daughter with the stigma of coming from a broken home always outweighed my courage to take that step. However, I wasn't just passively accepting the situation and obeying Tom. I've repeatedly asked for an increase in the grocery budget and secretly looked for work-from-home jobs or employment without him knowing. But with just $50 a month for groceries, I couldn't provide my daughter with decent meals. I had been using my savings from before I was married to supplement our monthly food expenses, but my savings were also running out. I was making every effort to ensure my daughter got nutritious meals first. However, such an unsustainable lifestyle of extreme budgeting eventually took its toll on my health. If I collapse, who will take care of my daughter? Maybe I should ask Dad for help. And with that thought, I decided to call my father. But after talking to him, I must have felt relieved. I lay down on the sofa and fell into a deep sleep. When I abruptly woke up, the first thing I saw was my daughter's sleeping face, with clear tear stains on her cheeks. "Grandpa? Mommy's awake." "Really? That's great." The next face I saw was my father's, with tears in his eyes. As I tried to understand the situation, staring at my father's face, he said, "Lily, I was really worried about you." "Dad, where am I?" "You're in the hospital. Collapsing from malnutrition in this day and age, what on earth happened?" My father, trying to hold back tears, choked on his words. He might have been crying the whole time I was asleep. He's always been a crybaby. "I'm sorry for worrying you. But why are you here? What about work? Don't you remember? You called me asking for help." After that, I was worried and called back, and Emily answered the phone, telling me that Mommy had collapsed, so I rushed over and called an ambulance. Saying that, my father gently stroked my daughter's head. "Thank you. You saved me by telling Grandpa. I'm glad Mommy is okay." My daughter, praised by her grandfather, was all smiles. I never imagined my daughter had grown up to be so reliable. Maybe she learned from bad examples. As I was looking at my daughter in deep thought, my father asked worriedly, "You've become so thin. What happened? Haven't you been eating properly?" I tried to brush it off, but facing my father's earnest gaze, I gave in. And then, I revealed everything about my life with Tom. "So that's what happened with Tom?" "Yes. Why didn't you tell me everything? I didn't want to upset you, Dad, after you were so happy about my marriage to Tom, and... My voice turned into a sob halfway through, and my father's voice, holding my hand, was trembling with tears as well. Lily, it hurts me more when you don't tell me anything. The moment I heard my father's words, my tears flowed like a dam had burst. Dad. I'm sorry. There's no need to apologize. I'm always on your side, no matter what, so you can talk to me about anything, okay? Yes, Dad. What have I been enduring all this time? If I had consulted with Dad sooner, maybe my daughter and I wouldn't have had to suffer. I felt like I had lost sight of what was important, all in the effort not to worry my daughter and father. A home without smiles and filled with shouts couldn't possibly be a happy place for my daughter to grow up in. After seeing the change in my expression, my father said, "I'll make a phone call," and left the hospital room. After my father had returned and we had been talking for about an hour, Tom arrived at the hospital. Hey. Don't call my workplace for such nonsense. Tom entered the room hastily, irritated, but upon seeing my father, he quickly changed his attitude. Oh, hi. My father, on the other hand, remained calm in the face of Tom's usually unseen aggressive behavior. This is a hospital. Don't raise your voice like that, it'll bother the other patients. But, it's because Lily told the reception she was hospitalized due to malnutrition. Oh, I was the one who made that call. Is there a problem with that? What? You called? Because of that, I was embarrassed in front of my colleagues, getting looked at with disdain. Give me a break. Embarrassment, huh? Compared to what you've been doing to my daughter, that's nothing, isn't it? Tom became even more agitated in the face of my father's unwavering calmness. Lily, what the hell have you been blabbing about? This is a family matter. My father gently embraced my startled daughter, but Tom paid her no heed. It's as if he couldn't even see her. This time Tom turned on me, but strangely, I felt calm. Having my father and daughter by my side, I could face my husband with an unexpectedly firm stance. Now what? Are you going to lay a hand on me? Whoa, quite feisty today, aren't we? Getting all cheeky. As I was about to retort to my enraged husband, my father intervened and confronted Tom. Tom. Before you shout at my daughter, don't you have something you should say to me? What would that be? Tom asked, looking puzzled. Despite his anger, my father continued calmly. You're paid a decent salary. Yet, you don't feed my daughter. What's the reason for that? What have you been spending it on? Tom fell silent. However, what are you angry about? This is just discipline. There's no problem here. More importantly, when will the position of president be vacant? I'm always ready to take over. What? My father was at a loss for words at Tom's absurd statement, revealing his true nature. What are you surprised about? It's only natural for me, the husband of the president's daughter, to take over the company, right? With someone as competent as me at the helm, a small to medium-sized business will surely become a prominently growing enterprise. You should hand over the presidency to me right away, shouldn't you? Tom continued with his nonsensical statements. My father seemed too appalled to respond, so I stepped in. If someone like you became president, the company would go bankrupt in no time. What did you say? As Tom was about to lash out at me, my father grabbed his arm. You're fired, effective immediately. What? Didn't you hear? You're fired. Having an employee like you would ruin the company. And you want the presidency? You must be dreaming. For the first time, Tom was speechless and frozen, faced with my father's rage. Then, I delivered the final blow to Tom. Let's get a divorce. I can't stand to be with you anymore. It's bad for our daughter's upbringing. And I don't want to trouble my father any further. Tom, faced with the declaration of divorce, retorted, Hey. If I can't become president, there's no point in marrying a woman like you. Excuse me? The only attractive thing about you was the title of the president's daughter, right? I married you because I wanted to be the successor. Tom's unbelievable statement. I thought Tom had changed. But I never imagined he was like this from the start. Then, as my father opened the door and said, "Please come in," Tom's parents entered the hospital room. "Mom. And Dad too. Why are you here?" Tom began to panic immediately. My in-laws apologized to me. I told them, "It's not your fault," and offered them seats, their faces red as they began lecturing Tom. "We came as soon as we got the call. We've been listening outside. What are you doing to your precious wife and child? We're disowning you as our son." "What?" Then, my daughter handed the divorce papers to my mother-in-law. "Here. This." It seemed she knew I always kept them in my bag. "What? Why?" "Just perfect," said my mother-in-law as she took the divorce papers, filled them in and then took Tom back home with her. "Please go ahead and divorce this man. We'll take care of the alimony and child support. We'll make sure he pays." A few days later, without any hesitation, I went to the county court with my father and daughter and filed the divorce. Later, we discussed child support and alimony under the guidance of a lawyer recommended by my in-laws, and Tom was very subdued throughout. We agreed on a lump sum payment for alimony and child support from Tom's savings, and I bid him farewell with a "take care" as we left the lawyer's office. A year has passed since then. I'm working part-time at my father's company. "You are more competent than that man ever was. It's a big help having you here," my father said, so I decided to work during daycare hours. Thinking about the future, I became so efficient at accounting that people jokingly suggested, "You should be the next president." My father kept saying, "Yes, that's my daughter. Maybe she should," showing his typical doting parent behavior. But each time, I'd respond with, "But then I'd have less time with my daughter, right?" and laugh it off. Later, I had an arranged meeting with the son of President Johnson. A business partner and a close friend of my father, he said, "If my son ever causes trouble, let me know. I will definitely protect you." And his son turned out to be a very nice person, so I'm seriously considering marriage. I don't know what became of Tom. My daughter was fond of her former grandparents, so we occasionally meet up, but they avoid bringing up Tom. I'm truly surrounded by wonderful people. Perhaps this is all thanks to my father, who raised me all by himself with all his might. Even the photo of my mother in the room seems to be smiling a bit more. I plan to continue cherishing my family and live happily with my daughter. "Mommy, more please. You're so amazing." My daughter is happily eating her meal again today. I will never let her experience hardships again. That, I vowed to myself.